the pressure mounts for athletes, and especially I think it's going to mount come November, December, February, March, when people look at the season that is going to come upon us, that when races are going to happen. March hits and they think, oh, I guess I better start getting in shape. Well, if they're using this whole 2020 to have that, I don't really need to be motivated. Nothing's really happening. I'm just going to take some time off. The amount of pressure that they're going to heap on themselves when racing does come back, because I'm going to tell you this right now. When racing comes back, entries are going to be limited and races are going to be sold out in seconds.
Hey, Coach, how's it going, my man?
Hey, dude, I am good. It is Monday morning. It is August 24th, 2020. Welcome aboard. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 402.
All right.
402, is that correct?
That is correct.
I'm
focusing on fading
I know,
out
you're doing
and
an
trying to
excellent
think
job.
about what podcast it is.
Yeah, that's good. You do the fade, I'll do the count. Yeah, it's 402. And welcome. We for your first time listening, we appreciate you giving us the time. We know you have, you probably have a lot of podcast options and very, even more probably triathlon podcast options, but we appreciate you giving us your time. We know it's valuable. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast. We'll try to keep things around an hour, as we do, and as we've always done, twice a week for the past 4 years. We cover all things triathlon, and, we also cover a lot of things life, so that's what we'll do, I'm sure.
Life, a lot
of life today. We always cover life, but, the triathlon is life.
No. We're going to do a lot of
We're
triathlon.
do a lot of triathlon today? Okay, yeah. We want to keep people somewhat engaged, but yeah, we do. It's, again, if it's your first time listening, we cover triathlon training, we cover life, we cover in-depth aspects of swim, bike, run, training philosophy. Mike and I, for the most part, we try to do our best to share our experiences in racing and training and then life from doing this both as coaches and athletes. For myself, for the 15, it seems I'm eventually going to have to say 20. Man. I know, but that makes me feel like really, really old when I say that I've been doing the sport for that long and coaching for 15 years and doing that. So a guy actually asked me this weekend. We had a bunch of athletes come in town. We with races being canceled and postponed and deferred and uncertainty, and even if you are registered for a race, people think that they're not necessarily going to happen. And so we decided, since we now have a place, our own space to hold events if we want to, we decided to put on a weekend of a sprint and an Olympic distance. So we had 5 athletes from 5 different states drive in. Some of them did a sprint on Saturday, and then they all did an Olympic distance on Sunday. And here at the hub, swimming in this pool, did a virtual bike, and then they all ran either a 5K or a 10K. But we were talking as I was running with him on the 10K, and he was like, "So when did you know that you wanted to be a coach?" And I don't even know that anybody's ever asked me that, but I think I said, I know what I said. I said way back, as if I'm like, I know I'm old, but I can't say like way back. Like, back when I had to walk uphill both ways in the snow to school. No, I said back when I was in college, my freshman year of college, I played college tennis in the summer for my sophomore year. I was an assistant club pro for tennis at a summer club. And I knew then that even though it wouldn't materialize till a couple years later, maybe 4 years later, that I loved coaching people, and I consider myself a halfway decent athlete. I've never been this outstanding, like really, really great athlete at one sport. Swimming was probably the closest I was to that, but I've never been like some outstanding athlete. But I've always felt like I've been a better coach than I am an athlete. And that summer I worked with like groups of kids and then groups of adults, ranging from like 5 to like 65, 70. I taught tennis all day long, all summer, and I loved it. And I knew then that I wanted to be a part of coaching or helping people with sports and just trying to explain to them and allow them to get better. And then I looked back how far that was, which was 20 years ago, and then started picking up coaching triathlon 3 or 4 years later. It's been a while, and I forget that I've been in the sport that long, and it's been interesting to watch how things have changed, and looking back on the events that I did and participated in, and then how much the sport in terms of racing and how global it's become since I got into it. And
I think that's because of you.
No, zero. No, I'm not. Yeah, it's definitely not a Robbie Bruce effect.
You had an effect. Man.
I've hopefully had a positive effect in some way.
They need to bring you back in for next year and get this thing going.
Yeah, I would love to just sit down and have a conversation with them. But yeah, it's been a long time, but it's been fun. And I feel like it dates me, but it's as much as things have changed racing wise and the amount of races that they've had. Like I remember the very, very first year that Ironman Louisville was announced. It's so funny because, like, like things in life, like some of the most important things in your life, like you just don't remember. Like you have very vague memories, but then
Right.
like very weird things in life, you remember specifically like where you were and what you're doing. I remember when I heard that Ironman Louisville was coming to town, I knew exactly where I was standing. I was actually living in Long Beach, California, and I was walking the street and I got an email and it was like Ironman Louisville. And I was like, Louisville, that's I've never been there. I was like, that's pretty close to not where I live now, but where I'm from. And I knew I was going to move back to Nashville. I was only in Long Beach for about a year, and I remember that race. And now it's obviously no longer here, but my favorite race. I talked about that this weekend. But
You remember that's your like 9/11?
no, it's not my 9. I know I was doing 9/11 too. Like I had slept in and skipped my first 3 classes, and then woke up and
that's close to Nashville, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
The funny thing, when I moved to the South, I feel like the people in Nashville or Tennessee or in this, I love everybody here, trust me. But I feel like they don't know
Maybe
geography.
we're not in Nashville anymore.
I feel like they don't know geography anywhere north of where they're at.
Well, no, everybody says you want to come down
Louisville's
here.
close to us, isn't it? Yeah, it's like 2 hours.
It's 3 minutes. Well, that's relative to like what you think is close. I mean, to you, close is it within a 5-minute walk? Because that's considered close. And if it's not, then for you, that's considered far away.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of get that, though, because I grew up in Wisconsin, and I don't know a ton about too far north, like in the state even. Like, where is that? That's up there.
Yeah, I mean,
It's kind of. I think that's what you do. You just like, if it gets colder, you're kind of not paying as much attention to it.
Yeah, I was always a not as my mom listens to this sometimes. I'm sure this will make her cringe if she listens to this today. But as a lifelong academic administrator,
Not much on geography.
not much on school. Period. I was always the notes that I got, my progress reports were always started out with, Robbie has so much potential, yet he doesn't apply himself. Which I think to this day drives my mom nuts. But she was very active this
Blue
weekend.
chipper that never panned out in the classroom.
And hey, we're not doing too bad. She was very active. I think, Mom, well done. She was active in engagement with Instagram this weekend, from what I understand, with Sam.
Yeah,
she was active.
Support.
For all three of our people who like our Instagram feed. But no, we will cover triathlon today. It's always great to have athletes in town to participate and do things and connect with people, and especially like right now when it's too long. It's been too long in between seeing people and having your hands on athletes and watching them and hearing their stories and knowing that they need where they're coming from and how isolated people have been. And then we always, especially like just from camps, we always take away stories and conversations that we have that always apply to training. And then even this weekend though, like I'd be lying if, coaching is hard in general. I love it, but it's hard, especially when I was having this conversation this weekend. I said, there are going to be athletes that I've worked with for this entire year for the first time. Like they started working with me last October, November, December, and they're more than likely going to go outside of like the team 5Ks and 10Ks that we've done. They're going to go through an entire year of working with a coach like myself and aren't going to have a single race to hang their hat on to somewhat show. Like you'll see improvement, as you should see after weeks and months of being consistent, but that asks a lot of the athlete to trust and to buy in. And so I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't exciting to see some races pop up with athletes, because it's a grind. And that's why so many athletes have bailed on their training, is because they're putting all this work in, and we don't require an exorbitant amount of training volume and hours. Like I'm very much a minimal effective dose guy, but even then, like athletes are like, why do I keep working hard when I don't think I'm going to have anything to show for it? And we had some athletes race this weekend, and one that I started working with in February, she did actually a 70.3, I think Illinois, which from what I understand was a very, very well put on race, as from what I understand, most races that are happening right now, smaller event management companies are doing an absolutely excellent job putting on races. So that's kind of my public my PSA today is to, if you see opportunities locally, go out and give them a shot. Do the races. Be supportive. Even if they don't go off perfectly, be very thankful for the opportunity to race. Everyone's doing their best right now. But she went out and raced a 70.3 and just rocked it. And she didn't really know or feel, I don't think, that she was going to do as well as she thought she was going to do until we started to unload and taper her. Like, she was putting in weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. She's got Ironman floor at the end of the year. We started working together, I think, in like January, February. And then you're looking at January, February, March, April, May. So you're looking at 8 months down the road, all this training, no racing. And when you're doing long distance racing, 70.3 or full distance, like the way that we train, and this is very common for most coaches and athletes, like you're just accumulating fatigue. That's all you're really doing, is you're just accumulating load. How is your body handling load? You're going to work your way from 8 to 10 hours up to 10 to 12 hours, maybe 12 to 14 hours, up to 14 to 16, depending on where you are in your development. And at that point, it's really just about your body withstanding the load while also getting a little bit faster and stronger. But as we've talked about on a couple other podcasts, is that fatigue masks fitness. And you don't really truly understand the fitness that you have until, well, usually two things happen. One, the temps change, right? You get that seasonal EPO. And then two, you shed some fatigue. And she shed some fatigue, and I knew she was feeling a little bit saucy a couple of days before because she went out and ran in like the low 7s for a couple bursts. And she was like, I never thought I'd see it in my entire life. Anyway, went out and raced and loved it. And it's been, I guess, all that to say, it's really great as a coach to see athletes who are working so hard, getting out there and being able to reap the rewards from putting in so much work. And then also feel like, as a coach, sometimes when there isn't racing or you're not doing, really fancy, workouts that are going to, with repeats and epic events, it's hard to remind yourself that, okay, you're doing the right things, you know what you're doing, things are working, and we're moving in the right direction. So it's nice to see it. So I hope that more athletes get a chance to race, and I hope more people to keep taking advantage of the opportunities to race in them.
Me too. So tennis was the turning point, huh?
Tennis, yep.
I bet you didn't know that I once got fired from being a tennis coach.
I did not know that.
I didn't think you did.
No.
I forgot about
Johnny
it myself
McEnroe
until
type
you brought
thing,
that up. No, it wasn't that at all. It was a summer, kind of a summer
gig.
Yeah, during college. And
did you have any experience playing
one day for the whole day? I wasn't bad. I used to play on clay courts once in a while. I got kind of hot. I kind of hot-shotted because I spent a whole summer in New Hampshire as a camp counselor. And they had clay tennis courts. And me and my buddies would get out there. And I loved it. It was really, like, clay is a lot of fun to play on.
It's a ton of fun.
And it was really nice courts. So we were playing all the time. And then the next year when I came back, I'm like, I can do this. So they would take anybody. I'm not saying, that was like just watch over the kids kind of thing. And I'll get back to that in a second. But when I was at this camp Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, this summer camp for 8 weeks, I was also the baseball. That's why they brought me in to be a baseball coach. It was a sports camp. So what I coached the, like Little League age, 12, 13-year-olds or something like that. And we would travel around to other camps to play. And we were a sports camp specific. And we would go around to these other camps. And they were basically, up there to kind of sailboat and do their things. But they all had to field a baseball team. And we just went out and ransacked everybody. Dude, I just had horses up and down the lineup. And we were beating teams like 50-2 in baseball. And I'd come back and everybody'd be like, yeah, excited. The team was all pumped up. And the owner of the camp would call me in the office going, dude, you can't run it up like that. Take it easy on these guys out there. I'm like, I don't know what to do, man. I'm playing. Everybody's playing. So I was undefeated, 7-0. Baseball coach. But yeah, so the tennis thing, it was probably something to do with a late night or two or something. And I ended up missing the whole Saturday and showed up the next weekend, and the guy's like, no.
He's like, we're not having this.
You're done.
Yeah. Well, that's, for tennis, I just show up like they'd started like really, really early, but it was, I played collegiately. My dad played in college. That's the reason I got into tennis. He was our high school coach. I just loved, I love tennis. I'd play more if I could. I loved coaching it.
Let's do it, buddy.
I remember I still I always get super nervous as a coach anyway now when I go to races or I'm tracking people, but that was like my first experience being really, really nervous for other people sporting wise, because our team, our juniors, our 13 and unders, we made it to nationals, and that year it was in Atlanta. And so I went down there with them, and they've got their parents and the kids, all these little kids, and they were super nervous about like winning this really big prestigious thing. And we had done really awesome. They had done so, and I woke up that morning and I was an absolute wreck. I was like, I was nauseous. I think I threw up in the bathroom. I was just not feeling it. But with myself, I've never got really nervous about my own, stuff. But clay courts was my forte because, again, like going back to Mick, I'm a good athlete. I'm just not a great one. With tennis, I never had like a huge weapon. My only weapon was I was going to annoy the hell out of you because I was going to I get my racket on everything. You name it, I'm going to get my racket on it. And I'd annoy you so much that you're just going to make a mistake. You're going to make an error. I would just try to outwork you because I didn't have like any like huge skills.
See, now those are the things that translate into triathlon, I think, because that's endurance. I mean, you have patience, because most people in tennis want to put it away. They want to get rid of this. They want this point now.
No, especially guys. It's like even a huge forehand. Let me just try to put this way, and they dump in the net or to go over.
It's sort of that mentality, right, where you get to a point where you don't care. I'm not going to play anymore on this point. If I miss the shot, I miss it. But if I hit it a winner, then I win. And that's what I mean by, I think that's a long course mentality that you're talking about. And I always kind of bring up these analogies with baseball too, because it's long double headers. It's just like a grinder.
It's an attention span thing, in my opinion.
You have to, every time I was on that bench, I'm like, I do not want to go back out there. And they're like, come on, let's go. And you have to suck it up and go back out there. And it has nothing to do with like physically running a long distance or anything. It's just about getting up off the ground or off the bench and going after it. And it's the same mentality. I'm sure every time that they hit a decent shot and you had to be like split second, am I going to run over right? Am I going to give everything I have to go get that right now? You did it. But it's that trigger mechanism to me that is an endurance mechanism.
No, I think that's actually a good point. I mean, and it does translate a lot, obviously, to triathlon and training because it is about consistency. But I think it also is about, attention span. Like for me, I knew that I did have a big serve, but outside of that, mine was always like, my thing was, my number one goal was, even if I can't get it back good, I'm going to at least get my frame on it. Because even if you don't win the point, if I can get my frame on it, then you stop aiming for just, because if you play tennis or if you've ever played before, like most people aim for the line. You shouldn't. You should always aim a foot inside the line. And like Chris Everett, one of our famous quotes was like, 80% of my wins came from just getting all my balls back to the center of the court. Like that was her thing. Is like just give yourself the biggest margin of error. In terms of getting in the middle of the court and then force the other opponent to create an angle from the center instead of giving them an angle out wide to make them create their own best shot. But you should always aim a foot inside the line. But for me, I knew that if I kept getting balls back, and even if I'd hit him in the net or even if I would just get the frame on it, then what I was creating in my opponent was now your margin of error you feel like is shrinking. So now you're not going to aim for a foot inside the line. You're going to think, well, he's going to keep getting these back. I need to start aiming for closer and closer to the line, and that would encourage more unforced errors because they start hitting them wide, they start hitting them long because they try encouraging risks. And that was my thing. And so I always made a goal, even if it was a lob over my head and I had to dive for it, I was going to get a frame on it because even if I was going to lose the point, I was establishing with them, my mindset was, you're going to have to make every shot almost perfect or I'm going to keep getting it back and you're eventually just not going you're going to have to make less mistakes than I am. And it was aggravating. They would get infuriated and I have to like keep my cool even if when I was getting, because it's about, so much about the, the mentality, but that's also how triathlon is. And I think that's also a perspective that a lot of athletes have or that are suffering with right now because they are in a very, very, very long point. Like when I used to love playing on clay courts because it's a slower surface. Like it always allowed me to keep getting the ball in. And so it rewarded patience, like Rafael Nadal, the best clay court player of all time. Like he gets to absolutely everything. And he also slides and moves around on clay court, is incredibly athletic. Like you have to, I think, have a natural gift with your feet to be really good on clay. It's different than playing on grass or even hard courts. And right now, so many athletes feel like they're stuck in a really, really, really long rally with really no end point. And because a lot of people are, I think, struggling with their attention span, what to focus on. You talked about this last Monday in terms of like having to have a race to really captivate or capture your attention. What's really coming down the pipeline, or is there anything? So what, like, I need to pay attention to something. So if I'm not, what am I really paying attention to? Like, am I creating these like huge macro goals, or do I want these like smaller, insignificant micro goals, which are just like, I have a 30-minute run today, therefore I'm going to make time to run 30 minutes. And some athletes like to go for winners. They like to take risks. They like the, even if it's like, and they do this in intervals, and you oftentimes see this in athletes that are newer to the sport, and especially like guys are famous for this because they love to take risks. They love to go big or go home. And you see that in longer workouts that they'll pull the string early and they'll just rip it, and then they end up paying for it down the line. And so, right now with athletes, with, races being for the most part pushed off to next year, for athletes. And I think that's coming a good time. Like I think a lot of athletes are kind of like, May, June, July, a lot of athletes thinking, all right, there is some hope. I think I'm going to have some races here. And then a lot of athletes, depending on what the races are, have now kind of just like transitioned into, okay, I've accepted that there aren't going to be any bigger races this year. Now let me resettle into maybe I don't have to worry about being in a really long rally. I can just get back to working on the basics, the skills. I can do drills. I can get the, the ball machine and go try and work on my weaknesses. And so I think it's a good topic of discussion is in terms of what keeps your attention span and what allows you to stay engaged in making you the best athlete possible. And I think that ebbs and flows and changes over time as an athlete, because different things excite you versus the way it was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Like for me, 7, 8 years ago, for me, it was like, I've got to be great, or I've got to beat so-and-so. Like I was driven by not negativity, but like I really needed outward motivation, or really just, struggling with inner demons and fighting those. And now, like, especially recently when I found myself in a really good training groove, I don't know when I'll be able to show off my work, but I'm just really loving doing the work. And I think that's a hard place for athletes to find themselves. But when they do find themselves in that zone of, man, I'm just really loving like getting the work done. It's not flashy. It's not like, because the work I'm doing right now isn't anything to write home about, but it's just like consistent work. And then I look back on the last 2 or 3 weeks and I think, I've done a lot of good work the last 3 weeks. And I know on the flip side of it, if I hadn't, I'd be looking back and thinking, I haven't done the work. And then what happens is that pressure continues. The pressure mounts for athletes, and especially I think it's going to mount come November, December, February, March, when people look at the season that is going to come upon us, that when races are going to happen, they're going to look back not just on, which is what athletes usually have, which is that I have to play catch-up mindset. March hits and they think, oh, I guess I better start getting in shape. Well, if they're using this whole 2020 to have that, I don't really need to be motivated. Nothing's really happening. I'm just going to take some time off. The amount of pressure that they're going to heap on themselves when racing does come back, because I'm going to tell you this right now. When racing comes back, entries are going to be limited, and races are going to be sold out in seconds, if not already. So it's going to, like an athlete that raced down in Birmingham 2 weeks ago, the guy who got second place drove to Birmingham from Massachusetts to race in a sprint. The field was like deeper than you would have ever imagined, a very small race. Like wow. People are going to be fighting to get into these races. And if you want to compete, or you want to compete at a high level, or you want just an opportunity to get in and be prepared for these events, you better get to work. Because when racing comes back full on, it's going to be full on, and it's going to be probably limited entries for most of these races because of the deferral process, but also because I think they're going to shrink the field size in the first few races to kind of get a really good grasp on how many people they can have at these venues. But you better be ready to roll. And if you've taken off the entire 2020, you've chosen to be lazy and not be motivated, and I'll just wait and I'll wait. Well, the longer you wait, the bigger hole you're going to dig. And in my opinion, like you don't have to work 20 hours a week right now, but if you want to be, it's funny. We all start off the year with these like massive expectations. You know, we hop in Tri-Calc, we sign up for Ironman Wisconsin or Chattanooga or Lake Placid, like, you know, yeah, Mike Torelli, guilty. You know, I do this well. Like, you know, like at the end of the year, I'm going to have done this.
Yeah.
And then it's gone. Well, now you're looking at a 2-year expectation of are you going to have thrown away 8 to 12 months of that? Or are you going to think, you know what? I don't need to tread water. I can just swim a little bit and keep my fitness where it needs to be, still improve, still stay engaged and focused, and then turn that switch when I need to? Or are you going to feel like you have to make up for 2 years in one season?
Well, let's hope that most people, because I'm sure that a lot of us have had sort of slow builds and then kind of almost peaking, and then everything got stripped away. So hopefully most people have at least engaged partially this year, and with the thought that they were going to race at some point, and so they've got that going for them. You know, I was thinking about it from my perspective, since I have been kind of injured, and 7 straight years of doing a full Ironman, and you know, was it something that actually turned out okay? You know, gave me a little bit of break. I've been fairly engaged, because I was thinking about, you know, realistically, if we're not going to race any big races this year, and then we're looking at next year, and I mean, I think it's a pretty good goal to go into the new year, you know, like 10% better off than you normally are, or something like that. You know, ahead of the game. Okay, let's say I haven't been doing much of anything. Why not kind of start bringing that together and actually go through the fall with a nice, consistent effort and building up? And, you know, it's sort of like back in the day, you know, baseball players would show up to spring training out of shape and use spring training to get in shape. Now they show up at spring training in shape, and they're ready to roll, but they fine tune. They're working
not all
on
of
their,
them. Some
not
will
all of
come
them,
in
but
shape.
you know, most of them that are, you know, getting those big paychecks usually are doing that. They're working in the off season. So to me, that's always the analogy of, you don't have to be mid-season form or anything like that. And I think that's where people get kind of just confused, is like, hey, oh wait, I should show up into that next year ready to race my Ironman. No, if you're 5% better off than you usually are, and you're ready to start executing, what was it? We had a podcast, Train So You Can Train Like You Need to Train. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the mentality I think we need to be thinking about right now. Even if you've kind of botched the summer, and, you know, now it's going to get cooler. You're going to have better opportunities and more welcoming weather to go run and ride and do whatever you need to do. Flip the switch now. You know, you don't have to, again, like I said, you don't have to be in mid-season form come January 1st. But if you're ahead of the game, more ahead than you usually are, I think that's the target market right now.
Yeah, no, and it is. It's like, and there's, the way you should look at it is you're always kind of like you are your base level of fitness minus the amount of time you've deteriorated from taking time off. And the goal is, and this is how you gain fitness each and every year, is you continue, like you said, like you accumulate a large base of fitness. And like I mentioned this a couple of podcasts ago, in turn, like, you know, people think that you just automatically reset at the Mike Torelli or the Robbie Bruce ground zero of like training. Like you come out and you hop on the bike for the first time and you're like, I can barely make it 5 minutes, because you haven't biked in a year. But it's always about the base that you've built. You know, for me, like 10 or 15 years, I could probably go out and probably kick off a 60-miler if I wanted to in the next few weeks, even after taking a long period of time off. And
I hope that happens.
Because
we're going to be doing it.
I know. But so it's always like the length of your base level of fitness minus the amount of time that you took off. That's kind of where you end up. And so if you're an athlete who struggled at the beginning of the year, now kind of find yourself getting excited again, which most athletes are going to find themselves getting a little more excited about. Like fall is for triathletes is like college spring break. You know, like February, March rolls around and you're in high school and college, you're like, okay, I've got to drop some weight. It's almost bikini season. I'm going to go out. I need to be ready for, PCB or Daytona in March. I need to go ahead and drop 20 pounds this month. Everyone gets excited. Everyone tries to get in shape. Everyone loses weight. Everyone tries to go to the tanning bed and get their body nice and dark and like ready for, to pick up chicks or dudes on the beach and, for 1 week. And for triathletes, it's fall. Every time the weather gets nice, they're like, oh, dude, I can't wait to go run. Versus a month before that, they're like, I don't want to run at all right now because it's 95 degrees at 6 o'clock in the morning. So as soon as fall turns, for most of us that live in states that actually have seasons, unlike Florida and Texas and places like that, where it's just like relentlessly hot 24/7, like people get super excited when it turns to fall because everything is so much nicer to do outside. And so you can start your year for next year now. But the longer you take off and the longer you spend in that mindset because your friends are doing it or your group training's doing it or you're just kind of minimizing the level of importance that I think you should have. And if you're just really in the sport just to get better and see what you can do, it's like, listen, you signed up for a race last year probably, and a lot of athletes did. I work with a lot, and I know quite a few that listen to this. Like, you signed up for a race in 2019 that didn't happen in 2020. Whether it was your first 70.3, whether it was your first full, whatever happened, you're probably not racing it this year, especially if it's your first one. Do you really want to still make that a 1-year endeavor? Or do you want to go into that race having been giving a gift to have put 2 years of work into that one day? Or are you just going to backslide your way in and still only use 1 year of opportunity and waste a whole nother year? And I'm not advocating for, training 12 to 16 hours a week year round for every athlete, but you should want to use this time to the best of your ability because you never know what's going to happen. And I think that's, as we've all seen here the last 4 or 5 months, we have no idea. We think we're in control. We think we're planning our life the way we want it to lay out. And then things happen. And I see this all the time with athletes that they have, they have all the availability in the world to train. They could train 8, 10, 12, 16 hours a week. They could really get ready for a race. It's the perfect time of year. It's fall, it's winter, spring, however you want to justify your best time of year. And they just aren't feeling it because they just don't have any motivation, or they can't feel the commitment they need, or they just don't think it's that important, even though they have time and they're wasting it. And then 6 months later, they have the motivation. And life was like, I see you have motivation right now, but I don't care, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, surprise, you're moving. Surprise, you have a new job. Surprise, you're getting married. So you have all this want and this need and this new motivation and commitment that's kind of risen from inside of you to be motivated, but yet you're not going to be able to use it because life is like, hey, I see you want to work out 12 to 16 hours a week, but on the other hand, I'm going to throw on you all this time, and you're going to look back and think, man, I really wish I would have used that time wisely when I just kind of assumed I would always still have it. And I think that's where a lot of athletes kind of find themselves in every year, no matter what, whether it's a pandemic year or race been deferred. It's like we take for granted a lot of time that we have, assuming that we're always going to have the same life and the same luxuries and the same flexibility and the same schedule. And then, if it's been more of a perfect example, I've got a lot of athletes that I've had to absolutely reduce their load by a pretty high margin the last week or two because their kids have gone from nothing and just kind of hanging out in the summertime to now a lot of these parents have to basically, if they're not working full time, they are now, because now they have to basically teach their kids this virtual learning and online all day long, which is accumulating more stress, and it's making life even harder. And you take their kids who are now having to adjust to, wait, I'm not going back to school to see my friends, and they're probably acting out and making life harder at home, which causes more life stress at home, which makes things harder for the parent and the athlete. All these things accumulate. So that's why I don't think, and again, I'm not here, you have to train all day, every day for the rest of your life, but it is about, taking advantage of the time that you have and understanding that you just don't know when you're going to have this kind of time to do it. And if you want to continue to raise that base level of fitness and continue to improve over time and give yourself wiggle room for the setbacks or for the time that you're going to have to take off with life, then you better take advantage of the good times, because we all have plenty of bad.
That brought up a question in my mind, because I'm thinking about, at least for me, when I am training for, say, a full, there's certainly a window. Maybe it's the last 6 or 7 weeks before a race when a certain new switch flips. Does this happen rather consistently? I mean, because it's like, I know personally that it's sort of like going over this cliff. It's like, all right, now it's on 6 weeks out or whatever. And then something just mentally happens and I just start doing the stuff. But along the way, there can be, if we want to use lighting or whatever, the switches that flip with just a little bit fewer watts. It doesn't always have to be the big bright light that flies on, you know what I mean? But still, there's a level of intensity that we can put into that mix. It's sort of like, okay, so what can be the intensity right now? And we talked about last time true motivation and deep motivation, and where does that come from? And, since I have been struggling with injury or whatever, I've been looking at different things. Like, I'm not working out quite as much, but I'm continually trying to be reminded that I want to work on my body and diet. And my diet has been kind of crumbling because I've been moving. I've moved 3 times in the last month and a half. I haven't really had a stove set up, and it's just been a pain in the ass for food and trying to keep fresh food and blah, blah, blah. So that's been kind of falling apart. But in my mind, I'm thinking about things like inflammation, for example, because I know that you kind of joked to me yesterday and said, man, you're getting old, dude, or whatever. And I felt that. I had a rough weekend for many reasons, but that is what's been on my mind as a motivator. Because to me, as I get older, as I get deeper into the sport, sure, training can take me a certain ways, but it's things like diet and sleep and reducing inflammation that make me feel better, that make me more motivated to feel, make me feel better about getting out there and actually doing it and not being sore and pain. Because even though we were joking, I think you were joking about I'm getting old, whatever. It's a deep thing with me, because that's the default, right? I'm just getting old. I don't want that. I'm not ready to hang up on that
card yet.
Right. Yeah. So, and I know that that's true because certain days, and this has always been a thing with me, is like certain days, even in my 30s, 20s, I felt like I was getting old, right? But certain other days, maybe a week later, I felt like I was in my as a teenager, and that still happens. I don't know if it's as frequent, but it still happens. So in my mindset, I'm like, wait, if it still happens, why can't that just be that? Does that make, you know what I'm saying? Like, if somehow you can pull it together on a day or two and it feels like you're young, or you feel like age is not an issue, why can't it be like that? Because it obviously is like that.
Well, knowing you like I know you, you operate, at least you choose to operate, which I think has convinced you that that's how you best operate, is you're a back against the wall operator. You like the crunch time. You like the, not necessarily procrastinating, but you have your own set window of, I need things to be close for me to really dial it in and focus, which is your 6 to 8 week Ironman training window. And I think over the years, you've now established a pattern of, well, this is what I'm always doing. So you're always kind of rechasing the previous year's baseline, which I think is also a good thing. It's because, joking aside, like, we all are getting older. So at some point, even when we don't know it, we're going to be 2 years past really acknowledging that our best days are probably behind us, but we just don't know when that day is ever going to happen. And so I think that it comes down to, like, is your back against the wall and how do you operate when that is the case? And I think a lot of that is a choice, like in terms of, because you can tell yourself my back, and I think your whole mentality, like, there's so much to training that is all above the chin. in terms of how do we perceive stress? Are we choosing to let it get to us because it makes us more, easy to make excuses, and excuses are okay, and it's okay to take a day off, and that days off turns into 3 days off, and like, I don't want to rush things because there's no races, and we all make excuses. There's just a lot of psychology. It's all psychology for the most part, and it's 80% psychology in terms of coaching. It's like you just have to understand what a true motivation is for an athlete, or what makes an athlete tick, or what makes them want to do something, or more importantly, what encourages them to not do something. And you've always been, except for your first year, because it scared you. You were, the first year we worked together, you would go through a couple bouts of not missing things, but, or of missing things. But other than that, like, you were up, you were at 'em, you were doing things, even if it was by yourself, showing up for the trace, an hour after everybody else, we'd still see you out there getting the work done, because it scared you, and then since then, it's always been, I can still do my thing. In about 6 to 8 to 12 weeks, I'm going to really dial it in and get things going. So you still have that base level of fitness that you transfer over and over and over again. And so once I think if you could truly harness that, because I think it does. I think everyone has like that. Like, you have the age thing that's like, I don't want to feel like I'm getting older. And I truly believe of you that you generally do believe that your best races are not behind you, that you still have your best races yet to come. I think you believe that.
100%.
Yeah. So, and I think some people say that they don't mean it. I truly believe that I truly feel that you actually truly believe that your best Ironman time is still ahead of you, having been in the sport for 7 years and getting, older. I have the same thing with me. Like, yes, I'm only 40, but I still believe that my better races that were before I got sober, I still believe I will absolutely obliterate them at some point in the next few years. And so I think you have to have that thought process, and that you can't have that fake bravado of, because I think a lot of people have that. You have to truly believe it. And then if you do truly believe it, you have to have that conversation of, okay, well, first off, do I just believe that because I like to believe that? Or do I believe it because I'm really ready and willing to do what I feel like I need to do to get there? And there's just a lot of psychology, I think, behind, for you, like the getting to that next best race, to I'm not getting old, to, because I know for you, it's also, you have so many friends that are getting older, and you see what they're doing and not being able to do. And it's like, I still want to be able to like do all these things and set an example, instead of being par for the course of just giving up on the rest of your life and thinking, dude, well, Mike Trolley's out here. He's my age. He's still getting fitter and faster and doing all these incredible things. Yet here I am not doing those things. Yeah. And so I think that there's a lot of psychology that goes behind. Every athlete has their own, I think, like you said, that their own switch that has to be flipped. And I also don't know that there is an exact science behind that, because having worked with hundreds of athletes over the last 15, 20 years, I guess, I have athletes that have just been inconsistent for years, that have probably only gotten in 3-4 sessions a week. I've tried every conversation in the book, and the biggest one I think you can do is just stick with them. You just stick with them. You'll get it, and then hopefully one day they will. And then out of nowhere, for no reason whatsoever, they just flip a switch. And you can ask them and say, all right, what happened? Because I want to put this in my notebook for like things I can use in the future for athletes that are like, struggling with consistency and motivation. Exactly. Let's put that in a bottle and sell it. And we'll go on Ben Greenfield and add a sponsorship. And they're like, I just don't know. I just feel it. And they turn it, and now they're like the most consistent athletes that I work with, period. And so there's a lot that goes into that. And again, like this is, this will make our first time listening, this is the worst podcast ever. They're not giving me any concrete answers about how to flip the switch and how to get my life together and how to be more consistent. But you have to ask yourself those questions. And then I think once you get it, you got to hold on to it for as long as you can, because you don't know when you're not going to have it anymore.
Mm. Well, when you talk about the psychology of how you used to race, when you had your PRs, when you were drinking and all that was going on, we both know what that is, right? It's just like, I'm going to show the world I can handle pain. I'm used to pain. Pain doesn't bother me. It does, but I can go through that. Mm-hmm. And then when it's like, wait, I was doing something not good to myself, right? Now that's kind of, I feel, what you probably are going through. And I think on some level what I've been going through, because it's like similar. Back in the day when, I was still doing it. When we started, I was drinking. I got into triathlon to get in good shape, and I met all these guys that were just partiers, but it was after running or whatever. So it was kind of a weird transition for me. But I think on some level, because you're probably feeling better, so right? I mean, consistently feeling better. There's got to be something in there about us being allowing ourselves to let it happen, to let go of it, to let ourselves do it. I don't know, man. I'm just talking through it right now, but to me, that's where it seems like it's in there somewhere, because I don't know. I wonder if that is just a long process of, well, I feel better, so I'm just going to accept,
Well, no, you bring up a great point. And I mean, we've talked about this before. I think it's discomfort and pain. And I know from even coaching you back then, like you felt like you had a lot to prove. It was your first one. The guys that you were training with, they had all done one for the most part. They were super experienced, and they thought you were just the latecomer who was just picking it up, and you didn't take things serious enough. Like I knew you wore that on your sleeve, like, until I threw it down and picked
I need
you.
more challenges.
You need more. You like that. You like that. And so I think that fueled you. But for me, like I was already in so much pain that, like I was talking to someone the other day about, like when I did the Swim the Suck race here in Chattanooga on 3 weeks notice. I did a 10-mile swim race. I ended up coming in 13th overall. I got smashed the night before. Like I brought with me, I'm not saying that'd be funny or applaud myself, but I was totally undertrained for it. I brought when I was in such a bad spot, and I was so much about drinking. I pre-mixed Crystal Light and vodka bottles to take with me to this person's house so I could have something to drink the night before. Because obviously, as an alcoholic, I had to have it, and I was just absolutely hungover the entire morning. And then went to the race and was able to dig deep and go. The same thing happened with my best open marathon, country music. I negative split and ran one of my best open half marathons in the back half, and I was in so much pain I couldn't think straight. But the pain was what I was embracing because I needed it, because the physical pain for me then was better than the emotional and mental pain that I was actually in. So it was actually making me feel better. Now that I don't have the mental and emotional pain, physical pain is more pronounced. So when I go and I have to get in a mindset now of racing or really digging deep, I find myself going. It's been a difficult transition, and I've talked about this before openly on the podcast, that I've often questioned, can you and are you digging as deep as you can in intervals or doing the things you want to in training now versus the way that you used to? Mm-hmm. And I don't think I am, because I think it's different, because the pain is different. But I find myself sometimes, I have had to switch my level of focus when discomfort from really just trying to redefine what pain and being uncomfortable is, because my relationship with it was so out of whack that it became foreign to me. The idea of what being in, I had to be in some sort of pain, I craved it. And now, my life is significantly different. It's wonderful. I don't have those mental and emotional turmoils. Yeah. It's wait a minute, pain, discomfort. No, thank you. I don't need that in my life right now. And so it's not that I'm allergic to it, or that I don't want it, because I think pain is how you grow. I have found myself having to kind of reassociate myself with, pain that is okay and just discomfort, or pain that is actual danger, because back then it was actually comfort. There was no discomfort. It was, I need more of this. I will dig as deep as I can go, because this physical feeling is generally a better feeling for me all around than what I'm currently feeling in my heart and my mind. And so now when I do intervals, I think even the other week when I was trying to dig deep on an interval on the bike, I had to go from, I'm no longer fighting this pain, to actually, I had to move to an area of gratitude. Like that I'm in a place now where I can choose pain as not as a reward, but as a method to grow because I'm doing something good, versus what I used to do in the past was just like basically use it as like, to flog myself and make myself feel better. So it's an interesting relationship that I have with it. It's still something that, and again, that race I did in Texas was the closest I've ever gotten since I've been sober to go. And you saw me after that race.
Yeah.
That's the closest I've gotten to, I'm in so much pain, but I'm going to keep going, and I'm in that space. And I haven't been able to get it back since, in certain races and certain spots. And so I think, now we're going off on like a pain tangent and what people need, but I think that level of discomfort and control or comfort and, not feeling control is a huge part of the psychological makeup of athletes and what they're willing to do or not willing to do. And I'm not here advocating that you should be in pain when you work out. Like, that's not something that I advocate as a coach. You shouldn't. You should feel really, really good when training. It should give you energy. But I think it's that craving and that relationship of what you really feel like you need. Because I have athletes that say this all the time. Like, they get on the bike and they're like, I just had a really bad day at work. So what do? They don't take it easy. They don't sit on the couch with their kids. They get on and they effing hammer it to like punish either. It's funny because our relationship with pain and discomfort and punishment is, I've personally had a bad day. My boss was rude to me, or my spouse was nagging me, or my kids have been terrible. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to beat myself up some more. And we dig like this massive, like they hop on the bike and stood. I was like, sorry, coach, I just had to let it out today. And you're like, wait a minute. I get that, because I do think in a way that's obviously a much healthier release than a lot of us could choose in terms of vices. But if you think about like a self-care way, how are we really managing treating ourselves the way that we need to treat when we've already had a bad day? We're already short. We're already super stressed out. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to heap more pain and more stress on me because that's going to make me feel better, which I totally get, because I spent my first 4 or 5 years participating in the sport thinking with that mentality.
Yeah. We talk about happy and healthy, and that's exactly the right overarching theme. I do think that this concept of quote unquote game facing or that sort of thing does play a part, especially in races, especially in Ironman. I think that there are times when we have to go to dark places, and I read about athletes talking about that all the time. It's like that ability to flip that switch and go into that darkness, or like what we like to say, how you're going to walk through the fire, and you're not going to walk through there all happy. You got to kind of get a little bit of a angst going on at times, and I think there's something to that. I think that we have to, and maybe in our cases, maybe it's like, I don't know, mentally putting ourselves back into that place, or just for the sake of getting through certain things or racing. I'm not talking about to the point of physical harm of yourself or anything like that, but like, can we tap into this? Because like some of this stuff, right, is going to be psychology of, man, I'm a bad person. I need to do this to myself. Can we do that under control? You know what I mean? It's almost like, can you go on hallucinogenics and kind of trip yourself into believing these sorts of things? And I think that kind of stuff is possible, and I think it's functional if we know that we can flip that switch off or whatever. The other night, I have had terrible luck with running and my plantar fasciitis this year. And this weekend I was feeling down, and I was feeling like I just wanted to lay around, and I just didn't feel good. And I got up and I said, in my mind, I'm like, damn it. I don't feel like doing anything. I'm going to go running for the first time in a month and a half or whatever. And I went out there and ran on like this gravelly trail. So it was kind of, I had zero pain. I ran like 3 miles. I had no pain for the first time in a long time. And you know what my thought was? I said, I'm going to go Dean Carnegie this thing. If you remember his opening story of how he got into it, he just went out one night and ran for like 30 miles or something out of the blue. And that was crossing my mind. It was getting a little dark, and I'm like, maybe I'll just go run around Chattanooga for like 20 miles. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, wait, no, don't.
Go home, take a win here, man. You haven't ran without pain in a long time. Be happy with that, and maybe bring it back in a couple days, something else, And if it happens again, maybe a couple times in a row, then you can go Dean Carnesi.
Yeah, then you can get that 20-miler in. It's an interesting relationship, because I see, and we've talked about this before, people always associate stress with something bad. And I've even had athletes could be going through a divorce and go through a job loss and go through having to move somewhere they don't want to move. And that's a huge amount of stress, and their training suffers. Or they gravitate more towards training because they need that stability in their life. On the flip side, you still have positive stress, which is, you see us all the time, athletes in a total zone, then they get a huge job promotion, they get into a great new relationship, and they're moving to a new house, and they lose motivation of training because all these other things in their life were going great. Their life was a struggle, so they needed training to add a positive spin to it. So now they don't need that positive spin anymore, so training takes a back seat. Or they were struggling with training, now they have a great job and a great relationship, and they're living in a great place, and everything is going great, so now training can kind of come back in. So it really all does come down to, I think, managing overall stress, understanding the stress that you're under, and is it good or is it bad, what's okay and what's not okay, and then just doing your best each day to apply and understand where you need to adjust your own training, whether it's taking a 3-miler as a win, or applying 17 more miles, trying to be Dean Carnassus and going out for some crazy run. It's about understanding yourself and your own psyche, and who is really having the conversation. Is it your true self? Is it your ego? Is it your authentic self? Is it the one that wants to be successful in 2 years? Is it the one that wants to be successful in 2 minutes? And what's really going to get the most out of you over the long term and keep allowing you these opportunities to get better and better and better each and every day. And I think that's the mentality that we all need to have, or most of us need to have throughout the remainder of this year. Is we've got, we're looking at coming up on, September, we've got 4 more months left of the year. It's like a ton of opportunity to do a lot of good things and have a whole lot of fun, and look back on the previous parts of this year and the challenges that you've had and the challenge you've overcome. And there will be more challenges, but it's, how have you overcome them? Use those as ways to positively spin yourself back into, if I can do that, I can do this. And if I can do this, then what can I do next year? And just use that in a positive way to get yourself back in a groove, to do positive things in your life, to help manage your stress, and to just, someone was saying earlier, I have an athlete doing a self-supported Ironman in 2 weeks. And she comments on Training Peaks. She was like, well, if anything, we've gotten a lot of really good information out of this build up for Ironman Tulsa next year. And that's so true. Because self-supported races are drastically different than actual events and races that have these huge hoopla around them. And just the whole experience is different. I think it pulls a different animal out of each athlete. But there's something that we can learn from everything, from every session that we do, from every experience that we have, from every week that we put together, and every training block we continue to build and stack upon the next one. Is that you're gaining experience in every training. You're learning a lesson, and if you can apply those just continuously moving forward, then you're going to end up in a better spot. And that might be in 2 years, or it might be in 20. But you're going to look back at the times that you applied yourself, that you didn't waste time. And, just like you said, it's about being happy and healthy. And that, I think, does ebb and flow. But right now it's about managing that stress and making the best choices that you can make for yourself each day. And not just, and I don't think it's about asking yourself that question and with a quick response, because I think we have to peel back those layers kind of like an onion and think, all right, did I say that it was okay to take it off because coach is pretty cool about me taking days off? And do I really need one, or do I just kind of want one? And if I do want one, why do I want one? And do I truly need one, or do I really know I'm going to feel better if I go out and do something versus waking up tomorrow wishing I really would have done something today?
Yeah. What I always say about that is, if you want to take a day off, go out for a walk and then see what happens after that. You'll probably want to run after that.
Yeah, it's like, that's very similar to what my first sponsor told me. He was like, if you want to drink, that's fine. Just sleep on it.
Yeah.
And then we wake up tomorrow. If you still want to drink, go drink, but just give it till tomorrow. And he was like, I've never had this person come back and sleep and go through the day and then wake up the next day and be like, yeah, I feel like that would still be a good idea. Let me go do that. It's very much the same thing. If you don't want to go out and do anything, at least put your shoes on. Go out for a walk. Take your kids on their bike and do something. And then if you just don't feel it, then you'll know. But 99 times out of 100, you're going to walk and you're going to think, man, really like to run. Or you're going to get on your bike. You're going to go to the
I
pool.
wish I was running now.
Right, exactly, yeah. You know, if you don't want to go swim, at least go to the, at least go and, you know, get in and, you know, hop in the hot tub. Those are probably aren't even open anymore. But, you know, hop in the pool and get a couple laps in. If you don't want to get out, or if you want to get out of the water, get out of the water. But most times, your mind and your body is going to be like, you did want this. Let's do it. And that's a great way to approach, you know, tough training days.
Yeah. Well, we could go on all night.
I mean, we can't, but
no, you got to get rolling.
Yeah, I got to get rolling. Taking a trip down to Nashville. But hey, this is as always, we appreciate you tuning in. This has been the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 402. If you want more info on all the things that we do, including our online hub, you can head over to c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things camps, coaching, and community. If you have any questions specifically for each of us, you can contact Mike at crushingiron@gmail.com, or if you have any questions for myself, c26coach@gmail.com.
Yeah. And I'm putting the videos of these podcasts up in the hub, the C26 online hub. So that's something. It's taken me a little bit to get the formulas down and everything like that. So, but they are eventually making their way into the online hub along with and/or clips of things like this. So check that out. What else?
That's all I got.
That's it. All right. We're also putting all your Zoom coaches calls in there. Eventually.
You'll get to them eventually.
It's just all these new systems.
It's the slow drip. You'll get it. Slow drip.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. This has been the Crushing Iron Podcast.
I'll see you on Thursday.
All right, buddy.
See you later.